Founded in 1955, Aflac has grown from a modest family operation with just over 6,000 policyholders to a multinational Fortune 500 company covering more than 50 million people worldwide. Aflac's Chairman and CEO, Dan Amos, has been running the family business for over 30 years, calling it the American dream.
You don't stay around 31 years in a job if you don't like it.
In this episode of Influencers, I'm joined by Dan Amos as we discuss his take on diversity and inclusion, how the pandemic has affected the insurance business, and the origin story of the famed Aflac duck. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer, and welcome to our guest, Dan Amos, the CEO of Aflac. Dan, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. I appreciate it.
And yes, of course, this is the Aflac of the Aflac duck. And yes, of course, we will get to that. But first, I want you to tell us, Dan, a little bit about the core business. You guys sell supplemental insurance. What does that mean? And what are some examples of products that you sell?
Well, we have been offering products for years that basically supplement the major medical policies that are out there. It provides cash to the customer to fill any voids they might have in their health care plan, like loss of income. They need to go to certain places that require like cancer treatments, and you're in a smaller town and want to go to a major city. All these things allow to fill those gaps, and it's worked very well for us over the years. The interesting thing about our company is, you're probably going to ask me, but is of course that we insure 1 out of 4 households in Japan where you have national health care.
I want to get to that. In fact, you read my mind, Dan. But first of all, before we do that, tell me what's going on with Aflac. You know, I'm asking all CEOs this. Right. COVID, what did COVID mean to your business? And then as we recover, how's that going for your company?
Well, I've always believed that with change comes opportunity. And so you have to look for how and where you can improve. The change has been how quickly we've had to change toward technology. And in the US, you generally have 20% of the Americans will change with anything, 60% of the herd, and 20% don't want to change no matter what. So as we have seen more and more technology and more of a paperless company that we are, it has driven our salespeople specifically to hire technology, and that's been good. So from that standpoint, we're liking it. Now, you know, it hurt sales the first year because we did so much sales to the employer at the work site or the employees at the work site. And we had to then change over and start doing Zoom meetings or whatever it would be that would be different. And so it's been quite a change. The good thing is that our policyholders during this medical crisis have kept their policies in force. So our earned premium has continued to grow. So right. From that standpoint, we're okay.
Right. And my understanding is that you had a low use of insurance during the pandemic. So I guess that's a low level of claims during the pandemic.
Well, we're just not sure if we're still going to have more claims. Let me give you an example. I have a friend whose wife was diagnosed with cancer, but she couldn't go last year. And when she finally was able to go just to have a regular checkup, it had moved from what would have been an early stage 1 to a stage 3. Now, hopefully they've gotten it and they've taken care of it. But what you don't know with these statistics, and it takes time to find out, is if they are a higher level, then the chances of needing more treatments that are more costly grow. So we're not sure yet how much is out there in the future claims that will come. At the same time, people didn't go to the doctor to use our wellness benefits. And so we encourage people to use wellness because early detections means saving people's lives and also lower claims cost.
But are you starting to see this sort of normalization of your business? And can you sort of quantify that? I mean, are you 75% back, or is it hard to tell still?
Well, it's coming back. It was still, I can't get into all the statistics because earnings will be out pretty soon. But I can tell you that what we said in our conference call was we expected claims to recover and go back to normalcy of what they were in 2019 within certainly by quarter of the second half of the year.
Let's get back to that point that you mentioned, Dan, about the US and Japan. And first of all, maybe tell us, how'd you guys get into the Japanese market to begin with?
Well, it's a fascinating story. My family started the business. My uncle John was the CEO, and he went in 1968 to the World's Fair in Osaka, Japan. And he saw a thriving economy. And he looked around and he saw people wearing surgical masks. And he said, "What's going on?" And he said, "They don't want to pass the cold to anyone else." And he did just like that in his mind and said, anybody that will do that is very health conscious and will buy insurance. I'm going to spend the rest of my time working on getting licensed. Well, we were a small company, but we were not going to be competing with the major life insurance companies. So it was a perfect timing to get licensed. And we were the first company after the war to get licensed to sell in Japan.
That must have been an incredibly arduous process, convincing the regulators and or the business to accept you into that country, right?
Well, I forgot the exact number, but they have about 25 insurance companies. We have over 1,800 in the state. I mean, the state of Georgia. So it gives you an idea. But there is a psychological difference of how they operate. In Japan, if they license you, they want you to be successful. In the US, they'll license anybody, but it's up to you to make sure it works out according to regulator rules. Well, the hardest part was getting the license. And we set up an office in Japan and started hiring people 2 years before we actually got the license. Not a lot of people, but just having a president, have it all laid out of how we were going to do it. And so we got that license. And the day we did, they gave us an exclusive non-compete that no one could be in our business for 3 years. And the reason is they treated it like a drug. Like when you come up with a new drug, you're protected for your idea for a period of time. We then got that license, and what we thought would be a small amount of business, we thought we might do $1 to $2 million. We wrote 25 million the first year. And the rest of the story is now we insure 1 out of 4 households, and it accounts for over 75% of our business. So when people see the Aflac duck in the US on TV, they have no idea how much of our business is really in Japan.
Does the duck market your business in Japan as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Does he say the same thing?
Well, that's a very interesting story. If you look at a cartoon, you don't see under there where it says quack, quack. They go gaga because they can't pronounce Q's and L's in Japan. But they liked the idea of the duck. When we first took the duck over there, my counterparts over there that I work closely with, they really didn't think it was a good idea. And I really wanted them to do it. My area is marketing. I said, I think it'll work. So they dubbed it. And the dub failed miserably. And so my head of marketing, I said to him, I said, here's what I'll do. If you'll try it one more time and make it successful, I'll give you a $50,000 bonus if it works. Well, God came down and touched that guy that day, and he thought it was a better idea than he did originally. And they changed it. They used a softer duck because they don't like loud noises in Japan. Our commercial, one of the things that was very successful about it in the US is that the duck was frustrated because people didn't talk to him and wouldn't recognize him. In Japan, that's considered a poor thing to do. And so they recognize the duck and see him in Japan. So we turned around and made it the Japanese style, and then it took off. And today, our name recognition is even higher in Japan than it is in the US, although we're, around 90% or so, 88, something like that.
That's a fascinating story about the differences between Japan and the United States. And I also love how you told the story about the face masks, which would have seemed totally alien to Americans until 18 months ago or 15 months ago. And now people get it. But of course, it is a different thing, right?
That's exactly right. But they do that to protect themselves. And, I was talking to somebody yesterday and I was saying, we should have a rule that says if you go into hospital, everybody's got to wear a face mask.
Or if you have a cold, first of all, stay home.
Yes.
But if you have to go out, wear a mask. Maybe people will start doing that. I'm going to get to the core Aflac question in a second. But first of all, what does Aflac stand for?
American Family Life Assurance Company of Columbus. And you might say, why did you change to Aflac? Well, when I started the national advertising program almost 30 years ago, there was over 200 insurance companies that started with American. There were 50 that had family in them. And there was one American Family Life Insurance. We are Assurance. So you were never going to get name recognition if you stayed. And if you had changed the name totally, you had to refile in every state. So they pulled your license and you literally would be out of business until they got around to you. And I couldn't afford that. So we ended up going with the acronym. And thank goodness I don't know if you know this story, but my uncle and the head of American Family Life Insurance both had the same name, and one of them had to give it up. And so they flipped a coin. And so people say, well, the American Family Life Insurance Company won. And I said, I don't know about that because we would have been Aflac and that would never have worked.
Okay. So then how did you come up with Aflac and the duck? I mean, to me, it sounds like a duck quacking. Was that how it happened? I mean, tell us that moment of the story.
Okay. All right. That's exactly what happened. The advertising agency that we had was sitting on a park bench in New York City and heard the ducks quacking. And one of them said, that is what we need to go for. And what was interesting is they said that I would never do it. At that time, you didn't have the Geico ads. You didn't have all of the other ads. So here we were. And interesting, we took a big chance making fun of our name because you're not just doing it, you're actually making fun of your name. And yet it forever changed our life and doubled our business in 3 years in the US.
What year was that?
It was 2000, Millennial Day. And what was interesting, you remember it was Y2K, and we thought we were going to have all these problems. Remember that? And so we had all these ads that we had booked on CNN and other places to be ready for it. Well, then when there were no problems, they didn't have anything to talk about with the news. So our commercials ran over and over and over again. And overnight, we realized that we had a hit. We actually had more hits on the internet the first week than we had the entire year before.
Wow. And so were you reluctant?
Oh, yes, I was very reluctant. But Well, let me tell you this. You got to put it in context. The way we grade commercials, or the way this company grades commercials, is the average commercial rates about a 12. And that's financial services. Other commercials rate a little bit higher, maybe a 14. But because financial services and insurance even rates lower, like about a 10. And the reason is there's not any interaction. On financial services, you know, you've got a bank account, you write, you do whatever, but you buy your insurance and you generally don't have any dealings until you get sick or some particular issue happens. But so in our case, it's a hard bar to get over, because you had Prudential and The Rock, and you had all these things, and they all kind of looked alike. And so the advertising agency said, I'd like to bring something different to you. Actually, my wife, that I've been married to now 17 years, she at the time worked with the company, and she went out and looked for different agencies, and she found the Kaplan Thaler group of 2 women, and they and their staff came up with this idea, the Aflac Duck. And I said, I'm willing to do anything, because for 10 years we had moved our name recognition from 3% to 9%. And I said, at that rate, I'm never going to get anywhere. This is ridiculous. So I said, I'll do anything that's in good taste. And so they came back with the duck. And so I tried to explain it to people. And I'd say, well, there's this duck and he's going to quack Aflac. And it was the absolute deadest look you have ever seen in your life. Now, what made it a harder decision was that we had another commercial that we could use. The highest commercial we'd ever had was a 12. We had one with Ray Romano, who at that time had the #1 TV show, and he was going to build building blocks, and it formed Aflac with kids. It tested an 18, 50% better than anything we had ever tested. The Aflac Duck tested a 27, almost 2.5 times better. So which one do you go with? Because one's safe, one's out there, and we didn't test likability. We weren't sophisticated enough. And so I had said I would go. Well, I called one of my friends as a CEO, and this is what he said to me. Nobody ever got fired doing 50% better. Go with the Ray Romano. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go with what I believe is right, and I'll pull it immediately if it doesn't work. And so that's what we did.
So the duck, you took the risk of the duck over Ray Romano. I mean, in retrospect, it looks not only brilliant, I have to say, but obvious, although all that what you just said makes it not obvious. But to me, Dan, I mean, what's so amazing is, and I tell people this when I hear it, it's, you can't have a bear roaring Google.
Right.
Or a dog barking IBM, right? It just happens to work with the name of your company, and kudos to that person on the park bench, right?
That's absolutely what it is. And it has stuck. And let me tell you something. People laugh about this, but we had a book on the duck, that things you could do and not do. And think about this. Our agents all wanted to dress up with duck outfits and wear them and go around. We said, absolutely not. Okay. Nothing but a white duck that's live. Because if you think about it now, even when you see a white duck, you think about Aflac. Yeah. But if we had diluted it by using mallards or using people dressed up as ducks, it would have lost the importance of it.
One last question about advertising. I want to do some newsy stuff after that. So now insurance companies' ads are famously crazy.
Yep.
What do you make of that? Is that due to the duck, do you think?
Well, who knows what it's totally due to, but it's predominantly, if you look at it, it's almost all property casualty.
Yeah,
And we don't fall in that ballpark.
true.
And we have a harder time because everybody knows you're required to have automobile insurance, or if you've got a home, you have to have it. Ours is an item we feel you need, and we need to sell that. So it's a little different.
All right, I do want to turn to some more serious stuff, Dan,
Okay.
and ask you about the state of Georgia. I have to ask you about voting. Your company is
Right.
based in Columbus,
Right.
Georgia, and you issued a statement saying you support solutions that make voting easy and accessible. You haven't spoken more directly about that than that, I don't think. Can you talk about the decision that goes into taking a stand or putting a statement out on issues like this, or this issue in particular?
Well, the person that has been the point person for this with us, and I signed, is Teresa White, who is our president of U.S. operation, who is an African American female. She's also head of the U.S. Of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and she has been the person that I have counted on as we have dealt with issues. We have over 50% of our employees are African American. We've been rated one of the best places to work in America for African Americans. I have my executive vice president and general counsel is an African American. Our second biggest business, which is our Aflac group, is an African American male. So I have let them, because I think it's very important that they help participate in forming the way that we address these issues. Our issue is we're in the insurance business, and politically, that has divided America to some degree. These
Yeah.
issues have, and so whenever you get involved, you're gonna make half the people upset, and it'd be half your workers, half your policyholders, half of everything. And we believe that let the politics fall where they may, but we as a company are very interested in making sure that our people are treated right, that people of color, I mean, our board of directors is made up of 65% being minorities or women. Now, that includes two Japanese, but still, saying that, we've been very focused for that for many, many years.
Okay. Um, Let me ask you about President Biden and a corporate tax hike as part of his infrastructure proposal. What is your take on that, Dan? Should big companies be paying more taxes right now?
Well, we pay our fair share. If you look at our taxes and what we do, you'll see that we've paid our fair share, always have. And, you know, I'm not the one that sets the rates. The politicians do, but what I will say is that as far as the other companies, I don't want them getting in my business, and I'm not going to get in theirs. But from the standpoint of us, we've paid our fair share, and we have no problems with that.
Aflac has vowed to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and recently took out a $400 million bond to invest in that path towards sustainability. Can you talk about that? How are you going to use the money?
Well, I don't know all the details of how we will actually use that money, but we will reinvest it in things that we think are important. And I would just say that we used to call, everybody calls it ESG now, but 20 years ago we had one called the Green Committee at the board of directors level. One of our board members, Betty Hudson, was very much into those type of issues because she, as a businesswoman herself, and so those type issues have been important. In our case, you know, we're not manufacturing, so we don't have the level of emissions or issues that you've got. But we've been working on it almost 20 years. All of our buildings are coming up to compliance, and so all of those issues have been important to us.
The Olympics are set to begin soon, even though a poll last month found that 83% of people in Japan don't want it to take place. Now, you've become somewhat of an expert on Japan. What do you think about the Olympics in Japan, Dan?
I said a little bit about the Japanese think in a different manner from the way the Americans think. They have a group mentality. We have an individuality mentality. So they move. I'll give you the example of when we changed our name. When we went from American Family to Aflac, the US took off, 20% changed. Then finally the herd took off, got to 60. We just about had to shoot people to get them, the rest of them over there. In Japan, nothing happened. Nothing happened. The group was meeting, they were talking. All of a sudden, one day they said, this is a good idea. By then, the US was at 50%. They were at 0 in Japan. A year later, Japan was at 85%. The US was at 80. And now they have number one. My point being, they've decided they're going to have it, and it's going to take place, in my opinion. And I hope they do. I hate to see all those athletes that have worked so hard to lose the opportunity to showcase that work that they've put forward. So I think it will happen. I think it will ultimately be good, because the Japanese will be careful. I tell you, that's the safest country. They've got so many assets going their way that it will be a good event, I think.
All right, since we're on the subject of sports, let me ask you about Nick Saban. I mean, you're a Georgia Bulldog, Dan. I mean, how in the heck did you hire Nick Saban to do commercials for you?
Well, it lets you know that I put my company ahead of myself. Because you are right, I'm a diehard fan, but I got to tell you, that guy, Nick Saban, is brilliant. I just got through this exchange that he and I had with each other to send to our field force, where we talked for an hour about issues that were going back and forth. And you can relate so many of his things to football. It's not coincidental that he's won 7 national championships. But to me, the most impressive thing is that he won the national championship during COVID. Now think about this, which is, with change comes opportunity, is he had to change every basic thing he had in 2020. He mentioned that he had 7 coaches out for the LSU game. And as you know, he's notorious for being a control guy. So all of a sudden he lost total control in everything. So we've been honored to have him as a spokesperson, because he's such a winner. And, I'm still a Georgia fan, but Alabama's always been a close second.
Oh, that seems like a very politically astute answer there, Dan. Good. Hey, so Aflac, as you mentioned, is a family business. What was it like growing up in a family that runs an insurance company? I met people who grew up in families of cops or farmers, but maybe not someone who grew up in a family of insurance, an insurance family.
Well, our family, we're one of the American dreams. We didn't have anything. And you've seen that pop with computers and all the things that have taken place the last 20 years. But prior to that, you didn't see that happen very much. None of not my uncle and my dad and my other uncle had never been in the insurance business. They just thought that there would be a place for it. My granddad came down with cancer and died, and we ended up introducing a cancer insurance policy. It's really, it was just hard work and continuing to drive and stay focused. It really was. I wish I could tell you, my Uncle John, who was the CEO, was a character and loved to do funny things, but still, all in all, it was just a hard working business that they stuck to. And I had the great opportunity. We don't own that much, less than 10%. All the families do, but they actually sold it door to door. So they didn't have the money. So and if you had bought 1,000 shares of stock at $10 a share, today it's probably worth, don't hold me to this, but probably $170 million.
That's crazy. I mean, I was about to say, Dan, that you've been CEO for more than 30 years and the stock was in low single digits at that point, maybe a dollar or two at that point, split adjusted.
That's right.
And it's, what, 50 something now? Is that right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible. But also the fact that you've been CEO for that long, I think it's longer than anyone in the Fortune 200 except Warren Buffett, I think. Is that right? And if that's so, I know that's the case. So how have you lasted this long? How much longer are you going to go? And what's it been like?
Well, it's been fun. I mean, you don't stay around 31 years in a job if you're not liking it. So it's been fun. I can't underestimate the pride factor of knowing that my family started it and wanting to protect the image of the company and the brand. That is so important. And in today's world, you spend a lifetime building a brand and you can lose the brand in 2 seconds. So those things can happen. But what I would say is you have to reinvent yourself. You want some people to get promoted. You want some people to retire. You want different things to happen where it's constantly moving and evolving and changing. But the one thing I would tell people that has been due to my success is that I've stayed very focused. Everybody's trying to pull you in a different direction. If you've got a good idea, don't lose the focus. Stay with it, because it ultimately, if you've got a winning hand, stay with it. Don't trade in any cards for it. And we thought that we had a perfect solution to part of the healthcare crisis by offering the supplemental insurance, and it's worked very well, and the claimants say so.
Words of wisdom from someone who's been around for a while. Dan Amos, CEO of Aflac, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
You've been watching Influencers. I'm Andy Sherwer. We'll see you next time.